Has hip-hop fallen off? I mean, it's been around for 50 years. People trying to make podcasts and posts all this bullshit about, this is the first time that there hasn't been a number one hip-hop song. So what? So what? Hip-hop ain't a young sport no more. Hip-hop is 50 years in the music industry. Things like that are going to happen. Don't mean it's dying. There's too many people putting out music to say hip-hop is dying. When I say too many people, I mean it's so saturated, it's ridiculous. But I guess anything for engagement, anything to have something to vlog, blog, or talk about, podcast about, is always going to have some type of dramatic thing going on. So no, hip-hop ain't falling off. Hip-hop ain't dying. So y'all can stop with the dramatics. So many people in this thing putting out music every day, all day. Definitely ain't gonna fall off. It's just showing that it's becoming older like anything else. Like I said, anything to blog, vlog, podcast, it's gonna have some theatrics with it. So people can start saying hip-hop is dying, and then they can have an excuse to complain about the younger generation. I don't really buy into all of that. But I will say this about hip-hop music. Right now, because it's 50 years old, because there's so much music out here, it seems like hip-hop is back at the early 2000 era, or the 98 early 2000 era, when hip-hop first, overall hip-hop became mainstream. And there was nothing really there was really no rebellious hip-hop. The closest thing that you got to rebellious hip-hop that will still have the anti-establishment, because in 98, 97, 98, hip-hop became the establishment. Hip-hop became mainstream. A lot of money started getting put into the game. So you did have certain artists that still had that rebellious, again, anti-establishment going on. But it wasn't a lot. Mainly everybody was, you know what I'm saying, rich as hell, and you not. I think that's the worst. I think 98 to like 07 was probably the worst era of hip-hop. 97 to 07, I would say. Maybe 98 to 07. Because around 08, to me, you had a re-emergence. You don't have, these guys are old now, but like the Kendricks, Pat Div, the Cool Kids, Cole wasn't the Cole we know now yet. He didn't become that J. Cole for another 3 years, because he was just another mainstream dude too when he first came out. He's still a mainstream guy, but he wasn't anti-mainstream until a few years later. But until he dropped that Friday Night Lights mixtape, and I forgot the other one. Until he dropped those two mixtapes, and that's when his change-up came. Maybe that's when he found himself after being in the industry for about 2 or 3 years. But you didn't have that Cole. But the whole TDE movement, like they had an anti-thing going on. That's what made the old, quote-unquote, old heads, such as myself, kind of gravitate towards a lot of those guys, because they had that anti-establishment spirit going through their music. And right now, I'm thinking that hip-hop is losing it mainly because there's no one coming with their own sound. There's no one expressing their own ideals. You either got a bunch of guys that want to, you know what I'm saying, get high and whine about being depressed and all of that bullshit, and killing the ops, whatever. And then you got a whole bunch of guys who sell dope and got drug bars, gun bars, drug talk. That's it. Nobody else is coming with anything else. Even Killer Mike's new album, which I haven't finished, I'm gonna have to start all over again, because maybe I'm going into it with a contrarian attitude, since everybody on that fucking Bird album was just talking about how good it was. But I'm like, when I listened to it, and I tried twice. The first time I listened to it from the opening track, I was like, man, this shit sound like, this doesn't sound fresh. This sounds typical. It's not like, you know, when Run the Jewels dropped, he was like, what the fuck is this? It's not like that. It's not like when Freddie Gibbs dropped that shit with Madlib, and he was like, oh, wait a minute. I haven't heard these type of bars over these type of beats. You know what I mean? In a long time. Or, in a long time. Or period at all, you know? So it wasn't like that. It was just kind of like, it sounds real familiar, you know? And the topics, subject matter, just everything on social media. And you won't say anything killing hip-hop, or anything that killed hip-hop, or anything that's watering down hip-hop. It's social media. Social media is watering down hip-hop, in my opinion. Straight watering it down. Because now, you know, when I listen to that Killer Mike album, or just like that Kendrick Lamar that last album he did last year, everything they talking about on social media. Everything they talking about on social media. So if you own social media, which is hard not to be, and especially if you black, all you hear about is men against women. All you hear about is abortion. I mean, just everything is just a mainstream topic. That Kendrick album was pretty much a mainstream topic album. I don't think he really did anything deep. I don't think he went anywhere that ain't been gone to, or anything we wasn't hearing about. It wasn't even a break from the bullshit that we was hearing about constantly. You know, you got a song talking bad about your dad. You know, you got a song about your auntie transitioning and your cousin transitioning. You got a song when you and your girl, your old lady fighting. Like, all of that stuff, you know, the whole men against women thing, Manosphere, all of that bullshit. Go 50, all of that bullshit, all the drama between people online. They're going to see a therapist. All of that bullshit you hear constantly online. And that Killer Mike album is kind of like, he's kind of going the same place. He's talking about, it's just real. It just doesn't sound fresh. It doesn't sound new. It doesn't sound fresh at all. And maybe, like I said, I'm contrarian. Maybe I'm just going against the grain because I see a bunch of people bigging it up, saying how good it is. And I'm like, fuck that. All y'all going that way, I'm going this way. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to start listening to Christian rap. Maybe that'll give me a different perspective. I don't know. But I'm not hearing any new sounds or anything. Because hip-hop right now, you know, because of how long it's been around, and because of social media, can develop a regional sound that's going to be new and be fresh, because everybody's trying to make what they think is going to get them a record deal. So they're going to make the music that they feel like everybody's flocked into. And if you're from the older generation, you're gonna kind of stick to what you know if you're making music. what you went through, or what you like is gonna come out in what you make. Especially if you got any sense of the older generation like I am. You're not trying to make music for young people. You're not trying to alienate them, but you're not trying to make it for them. That's weird. Trying to even make music for young people. You got young people to do that. But you can make music for older people, but that's not gonna create nothing fresh. This is gonna create something nostalgic. So I think hip hop is just in a space. Hip hop is middle age, man. Hip hop is just at a middle age stage. It hasn't reached that place, the age where it's like I don't give a fuck what nobody thinks no more. Hip hop has lost that feeling right now. Right now, it's in the middle age, midlife crisis stage. Hip hop is 50 years old. I'm 45 years old. I've literally grown up with this music. Like, it was new when I was new. I went through hip hop's growing pains while hip hop was going through its growing pains. Hip hop was in its 20s when I was in my 20s. Hip hop was in its teens when I was in my teens. So all I'm seeing is this music. I'm not going through a midlife crisis, but all I'm seeing happen with this music is that it's at this age right now where it's like, where do I go? Where do I be? And it's gonna find its way. It's gonna be a whole new crop of kids that's gonna come around. I believe that age discrimination is gonna actually end up playing out in hip hop, where you're not gonna have people no more talking about, oh, you can't be a certain age and want to rap, but still trying to rap. Like, all of that stuff's gonna get washed out, and hip hop is just gonna it's gonna go back to what it is, because it always does. Like I said, it went through this from 98 to 08, where everything was, if it wasn't cash on top of cash, with the same videos all the time, like everybody had the same weird ass fucking videos, like, damn, y'all motherfuckers can't think of doing nothing else. It went from that to a whole bunch of kids who kind of rediscovered the 90s music and the 90s aesthetic and put their own thing to it and brought that spirit back. And I believe it's going to happen again. Got to stay optimistic. But right now, I just think hip-hop is just in a space where it's saturated, it's middle age, it's going through a midlife crisis, it's trying to find that way back. Because everything is the same, and I've seen this in hip-hop before, where everything was the same, and it happened in 98, and it lasted till like 08 is when it kind of ended, where everything wasn't the same no more. And they just came from a new crop of kids that was like, nah, I'm gonna go somewhere else with it. I'm gonna do something else with it. I'm gonna learn the history of the music and really pay attention and become a student of this art form that we call hip hop. So I believe it's gonna get back to that place, and it ain't dying. It's just evolving. It's just in a dormant space right now. Because to me, from 08 to like maybe 2018, maybe something like that, hip hop was in a good place. When you had those guys coming out of the Buffalo and all of that, and the Bodie Jameses and all of that, those guys, like, it was a reemergence. I believe that 08, 09 to 2018 class, a lot of those guys that came out around that time, a lot of those guys was that new, fresh reemergence. But now that shit's starting to get old, because it's a lot of people starting to do it. It's a lot of people gravitating towards that same sound, the Mad Lib, Alchemist sound, drumless beats and all of that. So it just got to get back to a new place. Right now, we're probably going to go through a few years of this bullshit. But like I said, there's so much shit out here right now. You never know who's going to pop up. It may happen sooner now. There's a lot of people putting out music, but You just gotta wait for those people that ain't putting out the same type of shit. That's